Welcome to Mogobe Nuggets of Wisdom podcast. My name is Mompoloki Lerumo Mogobe. Our objective is to enthuse, inspire, energize, and empower entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs of all stripes here in BW and beyond. We do so by inviting these entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs into our makeshift studio. Sometimes we call them to the restaurant, sometimes we go to our studio, and we ask them to share their experiential knowledge, their experiences and their expertise. And we ask them as many questions as we can, aimed at empowering you also as a viewer. Hello dear viewer and listener, my name is Mompoloki Lerumo Mogobe. I welcome you once again to an invigorating, exciting episode of Mogobe Nuggets of Wisdom, where we get cutting-edge, knowledge-based, business-based information, life-changing information. And we've got a guest for just that this morning. I'm excited to announce that I have a guest by the name of, you know him, you feel like it's someone that, has been in your living room for the last 5 to 10 years. Maponga, Joshua Maponga. Welcome to the studio, sir.
And I was claiming this city as my city.
It is, yes.
Because now
okay.
And Khabo.
Okay.
And then they come around and say, this is Gaborone. I said, no, it's not Gaborone.
What is it?
Gaborone.
It's Gaborone.
If it is Gaborone with a K at the beginning,
with a G.
Then a G.
Yeah.
Then Gabo.
Oh, I see.
Rone.
Okay.
So you are actually in my city.
Okay.
This is Gabo's city.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Now, just give a short introduction, a condensed CV for the benefit of the viewer. I know they know you, but I just want to know how you introduce yourself.
I'm the mosquito in the night. Yeah. I'm the onion that steams in your eyes.
Yes.
I am the disruptor.
Yes.
But commonly they call me the watcher from the future.
Okay.
Living with you in the present.
Okay.
With solutions from the past.
Wow. And of course, you're a bishop as well. I see you don't mention that.
I did lots of that work, and sometimes titles tend to create formalism and isms. And once you fall into the ism space,
yes,
innovation dies. And I think for progressive growth of the human intellect, it is important to know if you can grow out of certain titles, because those titles are almost putting you there.
Yes.
You can't do that.
Yes.
So I've been doing this religion and bishopry thing here.
Yeah.
And now when I want to move into social entrepreneurship and cultural conversation, I discover that the title actually becomes an inhibiting factor to my intellectual growth. So that now when they see you talking to indigenous people, talking to traditional healers, talking to kings, seemingly participating in activities that other people are doing. But a bishop can't do that.
Oh, okay. So they want to box you in.
Then I said, no. If the title is too holy, that it cannot go and sit down with poor people at the bottom to eat with them, to walk with a himba, to walk to a cave with indigenous healers. And I said to myself, maybe the title is actually a problem. So how about you keep the title there, and I can walk myself out of this. And, so that has been actually a big, a knee-jerk reaction from the church space.
Yeah.
Where they're saying, but you're now doing politics.
Yeah.
Bishops are not supposed to be into politics. You're now culture. Bishop. Just keep the title.
Keep the titles. All right. But let's share a little bit of background. By that I mean, how did you become known as motivational speaker and as a philosopher? Give us a little bit of that CV.
The motivation, I did it early in life, but it's not a title that I still run with, because motivation is almost like a painkiller. Sort of thing. And I think I've moved into social entrepreneurship. I've moved into a space of intellectual property for the development of the African mind. I looked at the ground that has grass on it, and I looked at heads that have hair on it, and I said, maybe how about I claim the African mind space and begin to plant seeds. People are smuggling drugs, people are smuggling money laundering and etc. So I thought I would move into intellectual smuggling. Where I'm also and they are not shy when they are selling their drugs on the streets to destroy the minds of the African child. And I decided maybe it would be worth it for me to get into the smuggling space and invade the space of democracy, civilization, and seemingly this upward mobility of the African child, which is destroying his character and his sense of being at the center. And I'll sneak in there into the religious cycles and just become the Trojan horse in the midst of seemingly happy Christian space, happy. And that's when I designed programs such as I'm a Bishop, Abafundisi, the Joshua Show. It's not necessarily that I am anti-Christianity and etc., but I want to create a disruptive environment, a reflective community that can say, you have been doing this for all along, but can we just stop a little bit? And in an organization, and as you can see, you used to be in corporate for some time.
Yes.
When you can stand once in a while and say, can we do a review? Are we doing fine? Where is our leakages? Where are we losing it?
Yes.
Yes, we could have met all the deadlines and met all the targets, but it's nice to do a review. And if you can have someone from inside saying, boss, CEO, stop a little bit. Maybe we can do this, but we can do it better.
That sounds very exciting. So in a nutshell, what is your visit to Gaborone, Botswana all about? Can you just tell us? We're so excited to see you. And sometimes we forget to ask the basics.
Gaborone and Botswana is not a visit. It's a part of Africa. And we are all one big family. And the intention is to create a certain platform of common understanding for the African child. We have had Nkwame Nkrumah, Sankara, Julius Nyerere,
Patrice Lumumba,
speaking about the unity of the African people. And it remains as a very elusive dream that every time you talk about it, even to the modern children, it is punctuated with impossible, it's punctuated with colonial nationalism. I am Botswana, I am Buganda. And these things we are now holding as our national anthems, our national flags, have started to become more entrenched in ourselves. So that even when you talk about the African people as a nation, it comes secondary to Botswana as a nation. So, and I'm saying to myself, maybe before we can even begin to talk about the Africa that we want, are we intellectually prepared to begin a meaningful conversation? And then half of your intellectuals in Botswana have started outside of this space. I went to school with people like Tolakanya Foucault. I went to school with the Mpofus presidency. I went to school with Ben Strikes, Dr. Ben Strikes. I went to school with and I'm saying we were there together. But immediately you drop back.
Solusi.
Yeah, Solusi.
Yes.
And you look back and say, so academically, there are no borders.
You
can cross-pollinate. But immediately after graduation, it's like, okay, you stay there. I'm this and I'm that. And I'm saying maybe we need to take this slightly further. So the Namibia trip that we just did, the Botswana trip, South African leg, we're getting to Ghana, we're getting to Egypt, we're getting to Germany, to the Berlin conference, Rome. We booked it, where the Africa was divided into.
Really?
Yes. And
in 1815?
I am calling the African kings to come with me to that same room. And we want to make a declaration that what they did in this room is no longer valid. Maybe there is power in conversation, because if a group of whites sat there and they declared what has now become our problem for the past 100 years, how about another group of people go to the same room also? Maybe Africans will start taking it more seriously, because it looks like this room has so much power that whatever they spoke about there.
The dramatic part that I read about is when Leopold just took a big knife and cut the middle part, which is like a heart.
This is mine. This is mine.
The Congo, which is now the Congo.
So I'll take a big knife and I'll go around Africa and say, this is one country.
Make that declaration.
Maybe after that I should die. I'm done with my purpose. I'm here. Because if one man did that and he died, and we are still struggling right now to Norway, Botswana, and Namibia, and yet Botswanas are walking across each other, and Botswanas are walking across South Africa, and Kalangas are walking across Zimbabwe.
How did you come to your mind? How did you get the vision that going back to the same room would have that impact? How did that? I want to understand your process, your thinking process.
The power of words and the power of a vision. Sometimes it is way beyond the physical conversation. It becomes a spiritual conversation. Because I tend to understand that the spiritual world controls the intellectual world, and the intellectual world controls the vocal world, and the vocal world controls the material world. And until we understand, the man says, I want to get married now. When he says that, sometimes you don't understand that in that statement is a wife, in that statement is a house, in that statement is children, in that statement is geographical location, in that statement is aging, is a funeral policy. You say one thing, but when you unpack it,
it's a lot of things.
You find that actually you have just declared yourself. So when you say I do, though many times you don't feel like doing, but when you say I do, you have just said you're going to do a couple of things. And I think going to this room for me, and we can finally declare it and say it, even if it happens in the 5 years, in the 10 years, in the 20 years. But I think for me it is as important as what was said there as what will be said there.
Do you think then that after the Africa Continental Trade Agreement or Free Trade Area, that effort, that whole impetus is heading in that direction?
I've written a book actually entitled African Problems, African Questions and African Solutions. And in there we have a 7-pillar roadmap plan as to how Africa should start mobilizing itself there. I will not take that document and place it in the hands of the politicians, because the politicians have become the new colonizers. They have no interest in a united Africa, because a united Africa challenges their power base. Right now, if we talk about one Africa, every president in Africa says, I am the one who must be entitled to be the leader. So it is no longer about unity, it's about power struggle. So, but I think if that software and that information can make its way to the young people, to the common people, who can for the first time actually learn that Botswana by herself, she cannot challenge the world economy. So if we can take the diamonds in Botswana, the diamonds in Congo, the diamonds in Zimbabwe, and we create a stock market, which is a United African Stock Exchange, where the international community should come and buy the diamonds at the value which we who are producing them can declare the value. We can begin to talk about development. Our poverty is not poverty because we don't have resources. Our poverty is because we don't have a common selling place. So the first pillar is, before we can talk about borders, let's talk about economic borders, which are borderless. And if Africa can have one currency, for a start, it therefore means that goods can begin to move, even if the borders are still there. But money has no limitation.
So sorry to interrupt. So your view is that we need to focus on the youth and inculcate this message in the youth and more or less disregard politicians?
To a large extent, the problem with politicians, they don't have the political will to do that. Because for every politician to be in power, he has been bought by economy. The people who have the money are the ones who install leadership for us. Stop lying to us and telling us that you campaigned, you what and what. The economist is the main pimp. Politics is prostitution. Basically, you go for the highest bidder. So you cannot tell me as a politician that I believe in this. You believe in nothing. Because the policies, and people who put you in power, and by the way, when we buy politicians, the first 5 years, they are still paying back the people who put them in power. The next 5 years, they are paying their friends who supported them to get there. Only on the 10th and 15th year are you begin to looking at developing your own countries. And we have, and again, the painful part of being a philosopher, a researcher, and a watcher is that you are able to look at patterns. So I have 60 years of research, which I have started from the Ghanaian independence to South African independence. And you can tend to see from Ghana to the Mau Mau, to the Chama Chama Pinduza, to the Chimurenga, to the Mkhonto Wesizwe, to the Swapo, and etc. And there seems to be this tradition of an African gets into power, then this happened, then this happened, then this happened, and then another country, and you look back at 60 years, and if you think what I'm saying is not worth it, show me one African country that has been able to break away from the Roman Dutch law. It looks like democracy actually comes in as a token of appreciation that now you are civilized. And my question has been constantly, if democracy is the best way of governance, then why did you not give it to us for free? If you really believe that this is how the world must run, then why did we have to fight for it? This was supposed to be the freest gift to say, okay, but we fought for democracy. If I don't believe that democracy is actually something we must be talking about, it's all about war, it's all about colonization, it's all about managing each other. It's the worst example I can give you, my honorable, which is a very gross example, is a man rapes a woman.
Yes.
Or a woman rapes a man. Because now it's either way. And then after that, I come back and say, I want to help you to heal. Can I clean you up? Can I give you a new set of clothes? And actually, I want to help you on how to deal with your pain. And I said, this is the most narcissistic mindset you can find. I mean, how do you cause me pain? And then you want to help me to deal with my pain. This is where we don't understand as Africans, that you cannot think that colonialism and its partners.
Because you see the colonial masters as the rapists.
They are rapists.
And how can they help us heal?
No, they have a process of how Africa should put it. Even up to now, they still sit in their big rooms there, and when they are discussing African issues, Africans are not even involved. They're still talking to us as if we are footnotes on this text. When we are the subject of conversation. And I think they look at us as objects, not as human beings. They're actually sitting around discussing how do we control the African politics. So here we are in our pubs, in our hotels, everywhere else. Condoms are being put, our women are being pumped with contraception. They're struggling with high blood pressure, obesities, and etc. Who worries about that? And for them, is how many Africans do we need? Now, if you're talking about human rights and sovereignty and self-determination, is the African responsible for the estate of his reproduction? Or actually someone else?
No, I'm with you. I'm with you. What is your current partnership with Poya? Is it Poya Media?
Yeah.
And what is the effort there? Are they the ones organizing the German trip?
It's a political appointment that we also, as farmers of thought, we are saying we cannot only be focusing at doing things locally. We needed to start developing an intercontinental SADC sort of conversation, so that I'm in Zimbabwe, but I could actually appoint a media house in Namibia. Why? For a simple reason. They are on the other side, and the cross-pollination of information and understanding the market that is outside me, it already comes with it. The same ethos that we want to. Here is Namibia, here is Zimbabwe, here is Botswana.
Yes.
We are already in that space where we are saying we can take this thing further. So the diary is being designed and is being developed to be inclusive. And Poya Media has been appointed to handle for us the SADC. The SADC region, that includes Botswana, Namibia, Zimbabwe, even Zimbabwe and South Africa. Then we will see how we extend further into Ghana, Egypt, and going further up. We may need to pick up maybe another media house in partnership with Poya, maybe in Kenya or Tanzania, for the simple reason again that you want the people who understand the market where they are to. And actually, coming on that note, I might have to call up Dr. Mumbi, I think. In the Kenyan space to see if she can give us. I've done some programs with her, and it would be nice to see this big connection of the marketing and media people coming together, media people like yourselves, becoming media carriers, and move ourselves away from Yaruna, Mogobe here in Botswana, Mogobe. We'd love to see Mogobe in Ife, in Nigeria, Mogobe in Serengeti, Mogobe here, the pyramids of Giza, or we are here in Sudan.
I love that. There's an organization you founded called Progressive Institute, Muluki, Mulutsi. Tell us about that one.
I'm there to offer support. The organization was founded by people here, but we are there to give life to African brands.
Are you like a patron?
Sort of thing, a contributor, content developer. So the Mompoloki is the one who actually owns that organization on the Botswana side. But what we've done in strategically positioning ourselves is how do we again begin to take that and when watch that space.
Okay.
We are going to grow that brand into a monster because we are going to be talking to the government to get the blueprint of their youth development strategy. We want to take the organization around the country and do a roadshow where we are educating the young people, African issues, government initiatives that are available, moral regeneration issues, and just stop this capital city mentality where we think after speaking to G-West kids and Broadwest children, we've spoken to the rest of Botswana. I would love to see this in Maung, I would love to see this in Jwaneng, I would love to see this in Jakalasi, I want to see this in Mahalape, in Kasane, and go to those communities and carry this project. And I think this young man in Progressive Institute will actually be able to fit into that gap of the conversation.
Explain the phrase farmers of thought, how you came up with it or what it means to you.
My grandfather, Minyuki Marara himself, was a farmer. So I grew up on the farm, and there are lots of principles that are inculcated within a farming space. And I discovered and I've learned and I've now understood that if we can take those principles of farming into a thought pattern, we may actually have the software that we've missed for a long time. How do you break the ground? How do you clean up the trees? What kind of seed do you plant? How do you water it? How do you weed around it? How do you harvest from it? How do you, and if you can look at that process on its own and say, as a thinker, as an educationist or as a professional person, as an organization, how do you prepare your ground? You're into marketing, you're into broadcast. Do you know, we speak in language now that is more progressive, understanding your market share, you know, value preposition, you know, and networking.
Yes,
you
all
know,
those fancy words.
Cutting out the unnecessary. But you look at the process, for me, it is exactly as simple as a process of farming. So farming of thought for me has to do with 3 pieces of land, which are 3 estates, which we all have. The first estate is the estate of the mind. What are you thinking and what are you planting there? The next estate, the estate of reproduction. What are you planting? And
around the waist.
And it also grows grass, by the way. And the last estate is the estate of the ground. And these are the 3 things that every African child is born with in their hands. You're born with your head, you're born with your reproduction, that's posterity and continuity. You're born with ground. So how do you manage those 3 estates? And the most important statement you can remember after this conversation, you can't give a man or a woman the estate underneath their feet when they don't own the estate between their legs and the estate between their ears.
Wow, that's profound. That's profound. Now you've stumped me. I've forgotten my next question. But oh yeah, now I've just remembered.
Mandela said, did I freeze you?
Yeah, he asked Ted Koppel.
Yeah.
He said, did I paralyze you? Yeah, maybe you paralyzed me for a second. But let me understand your entrepreneurial philosophy. You're a social entrepreneur, but you don't look at entrepreneurship as about profit necessarily. Could you just help the viewer and I understand your entrepreneurial philosophy?
Culture and language is a currency. It is the most productive ground of innovation. To appreciate markets, you need to understand how innovation has been given permission to tamper with traditional molds of thought patterns to create new products that are able to move civilization forward. And for the African child, we've undermined our culture, we've undermined our language, we've undermined our traditions, whereas these things are a currency in themselves. And this speaks to fashion, this speaks to music, this speaks to architecture, this speaks to medicines and indigenous herbs, this and all these things. Right now that we're coming out of COVID, tell me you still doubt that pharmaceuticals are the richest companies on the stock exchanges of the whole world.
They are.
They are multi-billion. We are all in debt to Fraser, Johnson, and the Chinese people for their drugs. And you tell me that for the 1,000 million years we've been here as Botswana, we don't know how to treat flu. But if now I tell you this is the herb that we used to use for curing flu, and you take it to the government right now, it won't take you less than 10 to 15 years to get that drug approved.
If at all.
If at all it will make it. And before you even get it approved, the same culprits of the international market and community will have already taken the IP to develop something that is different from it. So here we are now as African politicians sitting on the same bureaucratic processes that make it difficult for African products to get there. And we sit around in parliaments and talking about non-employment. But you're not aware that this thing you're talking about is unemployment. It is actually a cause and effect. Because if you can unlock the indigenous platform, for example, if you can just open up the indigenous platform on medicine, I'm just taking that as one. And then indigenous people can plant those shrubs. They can process them within their local environment. They can put them on the market. And we create a conducive environment where indigenous knowledge, IP, intellectual property, can make its way from its primitiveness, quote unquote, into the local market, and the government then packages and helps them to package this into the international market. Diamonds are not the biggest thing Botswana can produce. Your culture, the depth of your history, and better for you guys. You still have the Khoisan that are alive. One of the oldest civilizations that are here. If I had power in that Mogobe, if I had power, I would make sure that every student of Botswana, before you get into the world, you need to spend 6 months bare chest, barefooted, learning the ways of the past.
Yes.
How to track an animal on the sand, and how to look at the dung on the ground and see, is this animal sick? Now, you tell me, you spend 10 years doing veterinary science, and that bushman in the bush can simply look at cow dung and tell you that this animal is sick. Can look at the way the hoof moves and can tell this animal is injured.
Yes.
And can simply look at the ground and say, there is a bulb at the bottom here that has water for me to drink. Then what the hell are we wasting time in concrete blocks thinking that we are getting educated when in fact universities have become factories of slaves, not of thinkers?
Yeah, that is taking me back to the question of your entrepreneurial mindset. You're saying that our liberation from this prison lies with going back to indigenous
knowledge systems.
Yeah. And what makes you convinced of this?
A simple factor, Chief. What makes me convinced of this is, I'll make it complicated for you, in fact. You believe in something because you doubt it. So if you believe in Jesus, it's because you doubt his existence. You don't believe in your mother and father because you know them. So what you know, you don't need to believe in it. What you don't know, then it needs faith. What makes me convinced is because this is tried and tested. This already comes with authenticity of historical truth.
Absolutely.
This comes with the fact that you are here. It means that your forefathers and grandfathers and great-grandfathers, they knew how to manage this thing. And here you are as a product of that. And for you to ask me, how do you believe in this? Oh,
yes,
really? I don't have to believe in this.
Yes.
This part, Chief, this is where I know.
It was a provocative question.
I
wanted to provoke that.
And when you come to a Christian space, it says the world perishes. Not for lack of faith. It perishes for lack of knowledge. Now, if you can find me in my theological space, I tell you that knowledge is more mature than faith. Because you can't believe.
More important?
You can't believe what you don't know. You need to be taught. Then you can believe. Therefore, for us to run around the world preaching faith instead of teaching knowledge, I think we're shortchanging people.
I agree.
We can't create believers. We need to create knowledgeable people. You can't go to bed and someone whom you don't know comes and jumps next to you and you sleep. But hell no. With a wife that you know you can quarrel and still sleep because you hope and wish she won't stab you in the night. Therefore, knowledge gives people confidence. Knowledge gives faith. You can sleep and you can still eat food from a woman you're not speaking to for 6 weeks, hoping she has not put poison in there. Because you know. Then when you know, you have faith.
Let's take it further. This is very funny. Let's take this further. Now, we are on a show focused on entrepreneurship. Most of our entrepreneurs, when we ask them to venture out, will say that funding, will say that there are not enough resources. I want to hear your take on how we get over this hurdle.
Yeah, and again, this is the conundrum of unpacking foreign concepts such as entrepreneurship. With all due respect, as an educated person, I know what entrepreneurship is all about. But right now, if I say go to the rural communities and then tell someone who has not been to school that you're going to be an entrepreneur, you already have started. The first problem is definition as to what is this even to pronounce the word becomes complicated.
It's a French word.
But if you look around and say creating value chains, production lines, and in the midst of creating those value chains and production lines, you are creating employment. And I beg to correct many people in Africa. Job creation is not an assignment of the government. Job creation is an assignment of the community. But the government must not make it difficult for the community.
The government facilitates
that. But the government right now is an impeding factor. Because instead of the government saying, we are digging cobalt in China, in Congo, and China is making cell phones out of it. So if I was the president of Congo, the simple thing to do is to walk up to China and buy the factory or the equipment that converts cobalt into batteries or into whatever, and move that equipment closer. Then local people supply the raw material, and then you come and take it from here. See how many jobs you would have created
in the value chain
between the raw materials. So for me, entrepreneurship may sound too sophisticated. As a simple man, how do I say, how do we beneficiate our beef in Botswana? How do we create value chains around that? Where are the skins going? Are we selling the cows off? Are we selling the hooves off? Are we making buttons from these horns? Are we making shoes from this leather? Are we selling the beef out? When we sell the diamonds, for example, out of Botswana, I'll tell you a shocking thing. This De Beers company is stealing from you because they dig the diamond. They have another De Beers in South Africa. So they tell the government, we have dug 5 kgs of diamonds and they are raw and they are worth 5 pula. And then they take them out of the country, they polish them in South Africa, and those diamonds are now worth 50 million. And then they take them to Arawep in Belgium, they sell those things for 250 million. And I have bad news for you. By the time they're selling them in Belgium, they're no longer bringing the money to bank it in Botswana. You are only being paid for the 5 pula of the raw material. So we actually have multinational corruption and thuggery at a high level, which the government sits and supervises. And what I'm saying is not like anyone does not know who is in positions of power. So for me, this concept of democracy and government management, it is actually people who are put into power to manage international corruption. And they come around and talking money laundering. And the same 250 million that is banked in Belgium, when they want to change your politics, then they take about 50 million of that and then they sponsor opposition and they confuse you with your own money.
What can be done to break that chain of what you call corruption?
Corruption is the venue. The corruptor is the one who is holding the bag that is full of cash. The corruptee is the one who is collecting the change from the corruption, from the corruptor. So the real corruption is not what you are witnessing with your politicians. Hey, mang mamtswere unali 1 million. Hey, mang ujile 5 million. That's not money. The real money we're talking about here are weapons that are being supplied in Congo with billions. The real corruption we're talking about here is how many millions, if not billions, are being moved out of the Botswana, Zimbabwe, South African government at the nostrils of the political leaders. You know
right under their noses.
You know how to steal money, for example? I did art for some years. You know how to steal money?
No.
You come to South Africa. This is high level, of course. You come to South Africa, you smuggle the drugs inside South Africa. You sell the drugs. You have the money in your hand. But you can't put the money in the bank. Because then they will asking you, can you have the invoice, how you got it there? So here's how you do it. You make the 10, 15 million. Then you go and buy art at the market. Then you roll it, put it in your pipe, and walk through the airport. And get to Italy and put your thing there. You sell your art for 15 million, take the money and put it in the bank. And so you have these cartels in the arts industry, in the fashion industry, in the IP space, who are literally transacting illegal deals.
So is the government not aware of this? Most governments? Is it this below the radar?
Maybe let's say how much are they being paid for supervising this mischief? But every time you see a truck driving through your country, carrying raw materials out, they're taking away your jobs, they're taking away your profit, they're taking away your money, and they're going through your borders legally.
So in other words, this business of capital, you're looking at it broadly. You're saying, look, we're looking at the small stuff. There's a much bigger problem.
You guys, and I wish many of us as African young people, this is the software. We want to start saying to our people, you cannot be in this country or in this continent and you study only to jump out of the borders to go and look for a job there. I wish we can take our students to the border post for a month or two and just say, watch what is coming out of your country. And then when they've known what is coming out of their country, then I take them back to the university and say, how can we beneficiate, develop, process these products?
Because otherwise it's just theory, unless they see.
So our students are here, our resources are here, and what they are studying and what we have is totally disconnected. That's why I find at the end of the graduation, I'm holding a piece of paper in my hand, looking for employment. I'm writing a small little CV. I'm looking for employment and etc. And say, how do I employ you? I thought you were educated enough to know the resources that you have. And then at the end of your education is not an exit from your country and your resources. Education must be a door into your community and say, now I know what to do. You cannot be a teacher and then you're looking for a job outside when there is no school in your village.
True. But enough of the negative but real stuff that you describe. What about the positive? What are the solutions? Of course, on the political side, this business of going to Berlin, I think that's laudable, that's something. But at a practical level, what can an average youngster do to empower themselves? Where do they find the right knowledge?
First and foremost, it will be important to speak to the young people in the language they understand. You can't use a Samsung phone with an iPhone software. It will simply tell you corrupt. It may even crash, for crying out loud. You may remain with the gadget in your hand, totally dysfunctional. Because what makes your gadget function is not the hardware only, it's the software that sits on the hardware.
Absolutely.
And I'm saying this with that understanding, that the African child needs to look at themselves from a software perspective and the hardware perspective. It's a shame that our education only looks at the hardware. How useful are your hands going to be? And I think we as the young people particularly, need to say, what quality of information, knowledge are we consuming so that we can cause our hardware to perform? I have a famous statement that I've always said, that when the face is beautiful and the software is not working, hardware always suffers. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. Because the hardware is a servant of the software. So on a positive note, we don't need a new Africa. We need new Africans. And the new Africans are the young people. They are the beautiful, young, red, vibrant blood that we have that can transform these things. So where do they find the information? Where do they find the knowledge? here we are. That's what Mogobe is all about. You're getting old, and I think the whole idea of sharing nuggets of wisdom and etc. in your own way.
Yes.
You're being sentimental about the place which wisdom plays in the formation of the culture and the environment of the people. So you need to be as passionate about finding knowledge as you are as passionate about finding brands. Because when you find knowledge, you may actually create the brands. Hey, you didn't hear me, Chief.
No, I heard you.
You heard me well?
I heard you, but you can say it again.
When Solomon falls asleep after killing and sacrificing 1,000 bulls, even God got worried. Could not sleep. No, this is my own Bible. God could not sleep. And he comes to Solomon in the night and says, hey, no man has ever given me so many cows as a sacrifice. What do you want, Solomon? What do you want, Solomon? Solomon looks at everything that he has done and said, I got the money, I got everything. I need nothing from you, Lord. And he says, tell me what you want. And then Solomon says, no man, give me some wisdom. And then the Lord looks at him and says, because you asked for wisdom, which is a good thing.
You didn't ask for the death of your enemies. You didn't ask for
wealth.
Yeah.
Over and above the wisdom that you have asked for, I will add.
Yes.
Wealth, I will add. So seek ye first. Oh, come on. I feel like preaching now.
Yes.
And his righteousness. And all these other things
will be granted.
But I think our generation is more in search of things. Not the seek ye first. Yes, for me, of course, what makes it more exciting? My old blood is coming kicking in.
No,
You've met me in those corners.
Yes.
It's kicking in.
Yeah.
Because many people think that maybe God does not want us to have things. And then you look at the whole concept of religion as if it is a restrictive zone of impersonification, non-function, boring, dull, long clothes, hallelujah, amen, women putting on long faces waiting to exhale. But here's a passage that says, and all these things will be added. So we have actually a conception of divinity and spirituality also deriving pleasure from people having things. But on your way to getting things, it's prioritization.
Wow.
What is it you must have prior to? And actually, that passage, what makes it beautiful is that you don't look for things. We finally use the Solomon example.
Yes.
You don't look for things. The passage says, they will
be granted.
Be added unto you. So we stop looking for stuff that is supplementary and complementary. Things must come as an addition to the space where wisdom is in residence.
It's like a bonus.
What did you miss? Oh, you didn't miss it. You caught it.
No, I caught it.
Now here we are focused purely on developing a consumer society. A consumer society that just wants to get money and buy things. And buy things. He said, no, guys. It's not about buying cell phones, buying GTIs, buying BMWs, putting furnitures and TVs, and then you surround yourselves with things. Next thing we hear, he has committed suicide. He had the car. He had the TV. He looked happy. He had the water bed and the electric bed. How does he die? Then we understand that in the midst of getting things, you may actually lose yourself. So what does it profit a man? Now, people say I don't believe in the Bible. I think I believe in the Bible more than many of you guys. Because what I'm looking for is the depth of understanding and perception. What does it profit a man? To gain the whole world and lose his soul. So for me, I would start asking the question, what and where is the soul of the African child? And on that note, therefore, things must not become a motivation for life. Rather, wisdom.
Okay. I'm going to take
the password.
This is beautiful. I'm going to take you on a tangent, Pastor. Back to the business of surviving in this harsh, cruel world in the eyes of the youngsters. What professions and what vocations do you suggest that these youngsters watching you now should explore more closely, and why?
That's a difficult question. But I'll make it simple. Before you choose a profession, take off your shoes. Go back to the community. Go back to the village. Jump on a taxi. Get on a bus. Listen to the conversations. Walk the streets of your people. Taste the water of your villages.
Mingle with them.
See the issues that are in the community. The best profession you can take is to be of service to your people. Now go to school and study how do you do that professionally. So even at the end of the day, we need more services as a community. And once the service is given at a professional level, the community is willing to pay for it. So what profession must you get? The real profession that you need is what your community needs. So it's one thing to get these blue-collar professions.
Versus white-collar, yeah.
White-collar jobs, which will make you empty. Now we follow you to your own village on your death casket. And now we know whether you were educated or not. When we look at your relatives, we look at your mother's hut, we look around and say, well, here lies Dr. So-and-so at the end of his day, and I'm telling you, everyone will be going back home with their heads shaking side to side and say, no, we thought
he knew his people.
So if you are saying what profession? Your profession is what you need. Your profession is what your community needs. And therefore, let education be a bridge between the intellectual, academic knowledge systems and the cultural demands. You should be able to get some money flowing there in terms of service delivery.
Okay, we carry on with our conversation. Bishop, although you don't like the bishop part too much anymore.
And you being an Adventist, of course, that title does not sit well, is it?
It doesn't. It's not.
But it's in the Bible.
Yes.
Because the word president is not in the Bible. But you'd rather call your pastors presidents than use what is in the Bible.
That's what they've just appointed Wilson, is it? He's just become the new president.
Yeah, reappointment, I was wondering when are we going to have a black president also in this world church. I mean, not even a black one only, even a woman president.
It's going to happen. It's going to happen.
Yeah, but it takes time.
All right. So one of the things that you talk about in your whole outlook is the importance of, personal discovery and personal development. And what would you urge the youngsters to do to develop themselves?
You are the most complex textbook to be studied yourself, to know the talents, to know the gifts.
I'm talking in terms of their personal strength and their relationships. That's what I'm talking about.
All right. But I'm saying, firstly, before you can look at external functions, the person needs to know themselves.
Yes.
You need to get into a space of accepting me, loving me, growing me, educating me. It's amazing because when we go to study and we do everything else, we're doing it for them because you want to go out there and do something. But many times, how often do we run away from ourselves and we think that we're going to have satisfaction and we're going to have peace of mind from external expressions when actually the fundamental root of life is personal discovery, personal knowledge. And that is enshrined, inculcated, embedded. Hey, I'm speaking too much English today.
No, but I'm following. We're following, yeah.
It is buried in you. So that when you understand your ancestors, you understand the DNA that runs through you. What was your family good at? What was your grandfather good at? What was your grandmother good at? If you go back to study your uncles and everybody else, you may just begin to understand that we are coming from a family of advisors, lawyers, musicians, community people, and that is even for you to do what you're doing right now, if I had a moment of saying, let's do a research into where you're coming from, you may just find that as a property person, as a professional person, you are now migrating in your old age, you're now migrating towards something that is much more satisfying and fulfilling to you. And what is that? It is sharing with the community and growing that. And if your child does not know and understand you, they may actually think that, no, me, I'm my own person. There's no one who is their own person.
Really?
We are all
interconnected.
Thank you.
All interconnected. All right. Now, today is June 16th. They call it the Day of the African Child. What does it mean to you, and what's the significance of the day? What should be the significance of the day to the African child?
I will say something that is quite unpopular, but altogether true. The first commandment we have in the Bible is Genesis 1:26. Let us make man. And then you, the educated, will say, no. Man here is not man, as of man. Man is a generic term being used for both male and female. God created the male and female. Me, being uneducated, I simply say the text says, let us make man. What does that mean, therefore? The church must be in the business of making man as a male species. The government must be in the business of making man. Women must be in the business of making man. Men must be in the business of making man. Because when one man is made, maybe somewhere down the road, one woman will be happy, 4 or 5 children will be happy, the street will be safe, the community and the country is fine. But you, in your old age, you now know, destroy one man and then follow behind him to see the trail of disaster, chaos. One man can rape 265 women and kill 68 of them. One man can rob and burn banks and etc. 80% of our prisons, if not 90, are full of men. So here we are talking about the Department of Women Affairs, dealing with the abused when the abusers are still walking on the road. So maybe we need to change this thing of the girl child, and etc. Because the problems we are dealing with are symptomatic. The cause is the dysfunction of men. So if you walk on all my social media space, 60% to 70% of the people that I'm walking with are males. It's amazing.
Because that's where the problem is.
I've decided deliberately to say, even if June 16 could be spoken in terms of youth, that it has actually been converted into a day of drinking. Sluggishness, rivalry, dances.
It's been abused.
And then you say, the Day of the African Child, June 16. But if right now we had a drone to put across Africa and across Botswana and say, can we just have a full summary of what the young people are doing today? There's teenage pregnancy happening today. There's drunkenness happening today. There's mischief happening.
I thought you give it a positive spin and talk about what happened in Soweto. We'll talk about those things.
But again, if we are to be discussing Soweto, we are looking in the backdrop. You are being more negative than me. Because we are looking at the misgivings of a political system that until the young people begin to pick up the liberation themselves, until the young people right now can walk up to the government and say, we say no to Africans. We say no to English. We say no to marginalization. We say no to bureaucracy. We say no to bottlenecking.
And to corruption.
Because you as old people are now maintaining the system. You are beneficiaries of the system. You don't want it to change because you're looking at your retirement package. But to the young people who can say the revolution is not in the hands of the old. The revolution is in the hands of the young people. So if today means anything to the young people, it is you as young people. Don't wait for the old people to discuss your future for you. They will not be there. They'll be gone. So start getting involved in political conversations. Start getting involved in your father's businesses, in your mother's businesses, so that at the death of your parents, this is a beautiful part about Jewish children. They don't have to start anything. If you walk around New York City, Mackinson and Sons, a surgery there and Sons, a bookshop there and Sons. And some of these guys have been able to produce 6 to 7 generations of doctors.
And yet there's such a tiny population. And they dominate.
Imagine a young Jewish child walking to his father's surgery after graduating. He don't need no venue.
It's already there.
He don't need no clients. He don't need no suppliers. He's actually walking just to sit on a chair where his father was sitting. And an old woman walks in and says, your grandmother, your grandfather treated me for this and this. And actually your grandfather is the one who delivered my firstborn son. And here's my grandchild. Continue with it. The beauty of legacy. And as African parents, when
you talk Jewish, I'm very fascinated because the Jewish, they are called the people of the book. And the reason they are called the people of the book is that they have the Talmud, they've got the Torah. They really internalized this wisdom, this ancient wisdom. So when you mention them, I'm just saying, this man needs to expound on this because I think there's a lot we can learn from those people.
A Torah in Shona, Torah means take it, live it, experience it. And the African family does not teach the Torah. They live the Torah. Because in our ancient tradition, a young man was educated to the ways of his father. So that when the father bends over to close his eyes, an heir in the family would continue on the family heritage. Therefore, you find that the issues of land and inheritance and etc. are very dear to African children. Because we understood that this is where our grandfathers' graves are. And every generation builds on the history of another.
Yes.
And that gives it the longevity that we are talking. If we are talking, you listen very carefully to that totemic conversation. It all circles around so and so, give birth to so and so, give birth to so and so. I am here because they were.
It's funny you should say that. I took over from my father as a headman in our hotline Kanye. First thing I did was trace the family tree.
There you go.
Right back to Malope. Yo unatsala yo abatsala yo tsitsi yo. Yeah.
And I'm here
and
because they were.
Every funeral.
You must remind them.
Every funeral, every marriage, you have to recite.
And by the way, this for me, and for you being a Christian, actually, this for me is exciting. Because then it tells you that African culture is not secretive. It is sacred. Therefore, even at a moment of prayer, we recite who we are, which connects us to God.
Yes.
But when the white man heard you say, the first thing they say, these guys are all worshipping ancestors. And then you read Matthew chapter 1, it says, Jesus you. King Joseph.
Yeah.
Joseph King Boaz. Boaz King Solomon. Solomon King Joseph. Joseph King Jesse. Jesse and King Abdam King.
Yeah. So it's very important.
So when you miss your genealogical connectivity and then you demonize that to say your grandfather was a demon, then if he was a demon, then what are you?
Son of a demon. All right. I want to talk about the corporate structure that we're in, but let me start with pointing out that for 2 days you had an event with APSA. Two-part question. First, how should we relate with these corporates? Some of them who have a history. A bit of an unpleasant history, number one. Number two, what exactly was the event about? You spent 2 days with these folks at APSA.
Yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful event. Let me start off with the relationship first before I go to the event. The corporate structure can never undermine the communities in which they function because the community gives them the HR. It gives them the human resource that they need. So that investing back into those people, you're actually investing in yourself because the quality of employee that you're looking for is coming from the community that you support or the community that you destroy. So, and I think for me it's very strategic. It's unfortunate every time when these big corporates talk about communities, they are talking about CSI. Is corporate social investment. And it always comes as a small little budget at the end of everything else. Just buy.
It's almost like an afterthought.
Yeah, buy some few soccer balls and throw them in the village. Yeah, we have done our social part. And you look around and very closely and say, are you really serious? You'll be here buying security to protect you from people stealing your things. And yet these people are coming from the community that you are throwing crumbs to. So for me, it was a very interesting relationship that we were having with ABSA. In Namibia, we were fortunate to be dealing with Sanlam, who also did a very fantastic work in terms of sponsoring some of our events that are coming there. We are looking at Coca-Cola in South Africa and extending our base. The purpose of the meeting was to create a space of innovation, career rejuvenation, reposition yourself, restart. We are looking at a backdrop of COVID, where financial burdens have been heavy, jobs have been lost, sicknesses and diseases have resulted, and many people who thought they had professions discovered that computers are taking over their jobs. We no longer need you here 5 days, you can do it from home. So people have, even in terms of your career, we needed people now to start rethinking. How do you do brand positioning within your environment so that when catastrophes and acts of God come into play, would you find that the way you've packaged your business, I'm a public speaker.
Yes.
And for 2 years, I was locked in my house. Could not stand in front of people. So,
you're doing things online.
Hallelujah to COVID. Then I created the platform for social media expansion. Of course, I didn't make any much money from that. People have robbed me and stolen from me for the long. I've not made a penny. But every time I would put my content up there, other guys would be waiting on the side, and then they grab the same content, then load it on their site. So you find there are videos there that are hitting 10, 15, 20 million, and YouTube and etc. paying those guys. And then maybe one day I must actually look for a good lawyer who can just go back to all these guys and says, YouTube, because the responsibility and ownership of that material is mine. Should there be any person they're looking for who have said something that they don't want, is me. But right now when it comes to paying, you are paying a third party for the content of the first party.
It makes no sense.
And then you tell us that, no, these are copyrights and what and not. Who has a copyright over my head? And but that's a conversation for another day. So the conference that we had was in discussion with young professionals that you need to create streams of income.
Multiple streams.
You need to diversify your business. You need to do brand repositioning and find new platforms of function and expansion and look at how do you digitalize.
And how did they receive it in Botswana, that message?
It's not a comfortable conversation, because in as much as it is a reality, it is disruptive. Because you're now looking at an employer and you're looking at an employee and you're telling the employee, this guy tomorrow morning might not actually be able to pay you. This guy will fire you tomorrow. And you're looking at the employer and say, with the way we are going, you might not need this guy. So
it's difficult.
But again, at the end of the day, I believe people are at the center of the conversation. And it was quite interesting. The media was very helpful. The young people who came were excited. Some planning to quit their jobs and start their own things.
Based on that presentation?
Based on those conversations, I've received some other guys. No, I want to start my thing. I want to write my book. I want to do things this way. So it has been a progressive, but I'm very excited that the conversation took place.
Okay. Now, I want us to go back to the theme, the original theme of this thing. But maybe before I do, let me just prick you with this question. I know that you've dabbled into medicine, traditional medicine. What is your view on this COVID? Is there any particular medication that you would recommend when the flu is ravaging us?
Okay. Yeah, we're in winter now. And for me, what is important is not even medicine. What is important is a healthy lifestyle. Because colonial medicine is symptomatic. It is not fundamental. There's a book that I've just finished reading, Healing the Exposed Self, done from the University of Cape Town. Beautiful piece of work. All diseases are exposure to something. All life is exposure to something, whether negative or positive. And there is spiritual exposure. There is physical exposure. There is emotional exposure. There is economic. Even see here the bankers saying, "Oh well, our risk, we are exposed." You know.
They say that a lot.
And when you look at this concept of exposure, so for you to get cold, you should have been exposed to the cold weather. So, and for you to get sick, you should have been exposed to unhealthy food. To unhealthy. So, and I think maybe for us to look at a health system is to look at it from an organic platform. Plants that grow in winter heal diseases that are in winter, plants that grow in summer, heal diseases that are in summer. And so the ecology around us. And if you look at my hat very carefully, this is actually a medicine hat.
Looks like a Ndebele hat.
Yes, this is a diet hat.
Explain that.
This is a forest hat. This is an architecture hat. This is a historical hat. You can eat yellow. You can eat blue. You can eat green. You can eat red. So your balanced diet literally would be able to give you the basic source of life. And if you take the same hat and walk through the forest, you find that even herbs have color. And the color of the herbs and the color of the food helps the body to begin to deal with these things. So when you look at a piece of hat for Africans, it's a library that we have not even started to unpack. If I would take this hat and I'd put it on a chair, you can write a dissertation from astrology to ecology.
Just based on this hat?
To medicine, to architecture, to the pyramids of Giza, and etc. By the time you are done, you can actually put this hat as an eating diet, as a healing space, and etc. And because our forefathers were too educated, they would not write books. They would just paint it into art.
or just share it orally, the wisdom. Yeah.
That's it. So you look at some people look at Kim Taggart, hey, that's a witch. That's what, and you don't understand as a young person. Hey, Mchana, sit down. Sit down and look at this thing with a summary of complex anatomy, history.
As you are speaking, you are reminding of the great philosopher who passed on a few years ago, almost 100 years old. Is it out of Swaziland? Was he based in Swaziland?
Who's that one?
I'm trying to remember his
Credo
name.
Mutwa.
Credo Mutwa.
Credo.
Have you met him and did you learn from him?
Yes, I sat down with him towards the sunset of his years. He was in Kuruman.
You sound in many ways like him. Am I the first person to observe that?
Not exactly. A couple of people have said that, but I keep my doors of learning open because then I'm able to re-engineer, relearn. And unfortunately, many of us, when it comes to cultural knowledge, we have not gone there to learn and understand what they do.
Yes.
We go there with a superiority complex to see what wrong they are doing and what they are saying, how opposite is it from what we believe, sort of thing. So it's almost a judgmental platform.
Yeah.
But I think the difference which has benefited me more is when I step down my high horse and I go to a village and I go to traditional and indigenous people. I literally tell myself I know nothing. So I go there and I sit.
You become humble.
I become a student. At the end of the day, I walk away from a culture with far much more than the judgmental. I mean, I was with the Himba people in Namibia and to learn of how they do their cleansing, they do how they are smoking and steaming of their bodies. They don't even wash using water. They wash using smoke. The powders they put on their skins, repellents of mosquitoes, worms for the skin, and cushions, the texture from the sun, and all this. You look at these things, and for you, who is coming from a white space, first thing is to be judgmental. Yeah, but you get closer, and our women would rather put on makeup that is embryos of dead bodies of children than use something that is organic. And so who is a witch here? The one who is drinking tablets of a human organs, or the one who is eating from the tree. Who is a real witch here? So even our witch doctors, it's not witch doctors. When they saw the African people doing their craft, they asked the question, which craft? No, witchcraft.
They were asking which one.
Which craft is this? Are they? What kind of craft is this? So it's not witchcraft. It's a question.
It's a question.
It's not a noun.
I love that one. Okay. No, I don't think you've answered me. It's flu season. What medicine?
Yes, eat well, drink well. Lemons are good. Oranges are good. Lots of citrus is good. 20-30 minutes per day, sit in the sun, absorb the vitamin D as much as you can. But on the traditional stuff, of course, lingala works very well. Mhlonyana works very well. In Zimbabwe, zumbani works very well. Go to the sides of the rivers there. There are those shrubs that grow there. Ask your old people how steaming comes in healthy also. And between me and you, I thought on high level, be as healthy as possible and eat fruits in seasons, so
time.
that you find that you get the benefit of the fruit. So
what do you mean? Not throughout the year? You have to pick
you can't be eating oranges from January to December. You must eat the winter fruits in winter.
Which ones? How do you tell the difference?
Just the forest is good. The forest and nature tells you the best. The problem with the genetically modified foods is now they're able to produce these things throughout the year, and then you miss the vitamin value of those fruits because they're now being organically generated. But if you find them in their natural habitat, when you begin to see fruits that grow naturally in winter, many of those fruits are actually very directly involved in treating the diseases of flu and viruses and etc. And just remember that flu is incurable.
Meaning?
It just works on you. When it is done, it's gone. Yeah. So when you have a flu bug, be warm, etc.
No need to go to the pharmacy.
Of course, you are too soft now as as commercial children who are what we treat in pharmacies are symptomatic issues of headaches, running nose, but etc. But it's 3 to 7 days, the virus is with you, and after it's only when the symptoms are becoming too severe. But it's not going to go anywhere. So the body temperature must be kept quite warm.
Any views on COVID?
I'm conflicted on COVID. For the commercial and the political issues around COVID, that African governments have been pushed into debt because of this COVID vaccines and etc. If the world market, the Frasers and Pfizers and the Johnsons were serious in terms of preserving lives, why not give the IP to all African countries and say, here is the antidote. Pay every drug that you sell there, give us our 3 cents or 5 cents also. But then people can begin to generate these for themselves. But for you to sit around, create a problem, create the vaccines, then make the whole world get into debt, and then you begin to force people. Here you are telling us about democracy and human rights. Here you are the other day where this is a trial. This is a trial. And it is a trial, yet everyone must be forced into trials. And then your first law in Constitution says you cannot take human drugs and human beings must not be used for trials. It's there. And the whole president of the country says the trials, we must all vaccinate with trials. Then for me, it creates a whole conflict. I'm sorry, it might sound very political, but it's
common sense.
It becomes confusing.
It's confusing.
Yeah, you can't come around and tell me that you are free. Then you come tomorrow morning and says you are free, but only as I tell you how free you will be. Then just tell me I'm a slave, and I might as well just start living there. So COVID has given us a new reset, where we are now understanding that actually if governments are not managed properly, they can be militarized. And health in this particular instance is actually given international bodies too much authority over poor countries to determine not only the functions of those governments, but to enforce militarization, to enforce and reduce the rights and freedoms of people. Here we are with soldiers walking on the streets that you can't walk. So it's almost like doing a tester, a teaser. Just let's see
how much they can tolerate.
If we can really create a real problem, we can actually shut down the world. And remember one thing for sure: while you guys are all shut down, there are companies that have made billions in the shutdown. So it's kill other businesses. So if you really want to know what is the cause behind this, find out who was making money when the rest of us were in the graveyard.
True. But very interesting and controversial. As you said, you are conflicted, as I am.
As confused as I can be. As confused as I can be.
Let's conclude with the trip to Germany. How does the world, especially Africa, become part of that? Should we galvanize our politicians? Should we? How do we focus attention on what seems to be really the centerpiece of your activities in the next few months?
It will be very sad that the politician, if he does not support me, I don't need their support. I think they need my support. I say so technically, because land was never taken away from politicians. Land was taken away from indigenous rulers. These are the horses. These are the chiefs. And when our children went to the liberation struggle, they were fighting to restore land to its rightful owners. Follow me very carefully.
Yes, I'm following.
You are a horse. You understand exactly what I'm saying. That the war of all liberation heroes in Africa was to restore land to its rightful owners. Here is the sad part. When they came back from war, they became and installed themselves as the rightful horses and owners of the land. I will say this loud and clear, with no flinch on my cheek or face. All African governments and presidents are illegitimate because they are sitting and supervising an estate which does not belong to them. The estate which they are supervising, it's a colonial estate. And remember, as a president, when you went to war, you did not go to war so that you become a king. Until we begin to understand that dynamic, that who are the rightful owners of land, it is the people. And you being a political head with a democratic system, with a Roman Dutch governance system, that is colonial, sitting on the policies and bureaucracies that were left by the colonialists, you have actually become the new colonizer on the space. My conversation is with the indigenous people. 2 weeks ago, we were celebrating the Queen of London.
70
No one has ever spoken that the Queen is a dictator. No one has ever sat down to vote the Queen out of power. But this very Queen that we are celebrating, she destroyed all our African governance systems and swallowed them into...
Maybe not her personal, but what she represents.
No,
the system.
My brother, you can hear me.
Yeah,
you can hear me.
Yes.
Yeah, when we talk about her, she is sitting on the top of that system. So when I say the Queen, I mean the British Empire in its totality. Now here you are, you walk around the whole world, particularly in Africa, and you wipe out all their kings. In some certain instances, cut off the heads. Right now, as I'm talking in Zimbabwe, we've more than 18 traditional leaders in Zimbabwe, Maponderas, Neanders, whose heads are still in here sitting room and living room as trophies of war. We're not saying much, we're just saying bring them back and we bury them properly. That's being African. So the Berlin conversation, therefore, it is an awakening of Ezekiel 37.
The dry bones.
The dry bones. It is an awakening of the spirit of the land. And our forefathers and ancestors are sleeping in the graves, but they're buried in our bones, alive and well. And when we tell you who your father was, tell me something in your spine. Don't stand. To know exactly, if someone says, who do you think you are? You almost feel like sitting down and say, Who's kimang. And for me, that who we are is restored in how we define ourselves as an African people. So the German trip for me is an invitation to all African leaders. If your kings and your presidents don't want to go with me, I will carry stones from your countries. I will go into Germany with a bucket full of soil and I will put it on the ground and I will speak to the soil as I speak to your ancestors that what was done is wrong. But I hope and I wish by the end of this trip we would have been able to make a big statement to the rest of the world. And by the way, I'm not a person of crowds. I can still do this all by myself. And
it's interesting you should say that, because after Africa, the trade agreement, the talks of economic union, 63 years. They've said they've given themselves 63 years. And I'm just wondering how much time is needed for the political union, for the political...
We already have 60 years.
Yeah.
We have blown. And they're putting another 60 years.
63 years.
That's another 123 years negotiate.
But that's what they say. They said the full union, where it becomes now a total integrated economy. Yeah. It's anticipated to take place in 63 years.
Being a business person myself and being a globalist, in my own right, I look at that plan, I giggle and I laugh. Because until that plan studies the speed of the global village towards the 63 years you are talking about. You are still thinking in 63 years you are going to be uniting But what is the global village right now discussing, which must happen in 63 years? You may find that you are on a collision course.
Yeah.
What you think you will be. It's like you telling this girl, I'm going to marry her 63 years from now. By the time you're going to marry her, she's in menopause.
Yeah.
So it's a funny way of putting it.
Yeah.
But
because the thinking was that with all these SADC and COMESA and all these SACU, that it will take time to unbundle them and get rid of those what do they call them, the tariffs and whatnot.
Morena, can I make an announcement?
Yes.
We don't have time. We need unity, and we need it now. We're going to be waiting for another 63 years of borders and customs and harassing each other as Africans. America is 52 countries, 52 states coming together to make the United States of America. Here we are, 54 countries in Africa. We're still talking 63 years
Makes no
of
sense.
marginalizing. And remember, in the 63 years, how many other wars are going to come between us? Will America and China be waiting for you to agree 63 years from now? I have bad news for you. The Chinese, the Americans, and the Russians are already putting military bases around Africa. For what? To manage you as Africans. That next time we have a problem in Zambia, I can shoot you from here. Next time we have a problem in Kigali, I can shoot you from here. So they are literally moving their weapons closer to yourselves. And you are still talking 63 years. But you are creating problems now, which in 63 years' time, you may be shocked that you're actually being run by China. Africa will become a war zone between the Americans, the Chinese, and the Europeans. If you cannot understand that, look at Afghanistan, look at Ukraine.
Right. I'm going to change your trend of thought and just say, give it the best spin. Give the best positive spin. If everything goes the way you like with this German trip, with the 1885, with this redeclaration, what do you see? What do you see unfold? Give us a time frame of what happens when.
United Kingdoms of Africa speaks of one African economy first, putting our funds and monies together.
How soon?
That has to happen immediately after. We begin to, how do we consolidate COMESA, SADC, and etc. But first, what I want, by the time I come back from Germany, I want to start championing one stock exchange for the African people. It comes number two, with one passport, allowing the African child to move around. It comes with one language, not one language in terms of we're undermining others. We want a commercial language which we can transact with each other.
Like Swahili or something.
We already have 30%, 40% of the continent that at least can have an ear and understanding of the language. It one thing, no man, this is a commercial language. Here we are speaking English right now. And how come in Africa we can be teaching French and German in Africa, and we can't be in Mandarin is coming in also the Chinese thing.
Yeah, that's
and we can't make just
teaching it. Yeah.
We can't just take one African language as a mandatory, so that when you graduate, you can function in Burundi, you can function across. So one language, and also one thing we're going to have as a declaration: one army for the African continent. We want to at least take 100,000, 10,000, 10,000 of each and create, and all of you contribute money.
Because there's a little bit of that in the AU, isn't it?
It's not them, and these things are being sponsored. These people are being sponsored by Europe and etc.
No.
They are busy smuggling minerals right here in Congo using United Nations trucks and etc. And they call it AU, what. We're looking at one army by one army. I mean, we have our one army that patrols our borders and make sure that foreigners are not causing war here. Right now, if we had one army, we can stop the war in Congo.
We can.
As a continent. And they say, no. Russia, you can't. America, you can't be bringing weapons here. Because you're by destabilizing Congo, you're messing up Angola, you're messing up Rwanda, you're messing up Uganda.
There's a little bit of that in northern Mozambique.
Marina, more than Mozambique, Kigali, Rwanda is involved. America is involved in ISIS and etc. And the invasion of ISIS in Mozambique is intended to invade into Zimbabwe so that they can actually cause more problems in the country of Zimbabwe due to the election issues. The very same white farmers that were kicked out would rather sponsor insurgents so that they come and destroy the government that took away land from them. Don't we understand that?
I hear you. I didn't know that perspective. I didn't know that.
So one army, one passport, one language, one commercial platform. Beautiful one also. We're looking at one academic curriculum.
But time frames?
I will put the software on the ground. I will declare and I will make my intentions known, loud and clear. I'll give the information as I've also been given by those that gave it to me. And I'll put it on the table for those. If I should speak like the Messiah, if you take these words of mine and do them, you are like a man who has planted his house upon the rock. If you take these words of mine and think Maponga J is sick, you are going to be planting the next generation on the quicksand.
Okay. What do you think of the pact for the colonization of Africa that affects the Afrophone speaking countries? Are you aware of that? The special pact that with the French speaking, because when you talk like that, that has to be dealt with as well.
The Luxophones, the Francophones,
yes,
the Anglo-Saxophones,
yes,
and etc. Again, in the backdrop of colonial masters arguing over their superiority. Is the French more superior to the British? And the British calling the French frogs, and the French called the wars of the 1800s, which were not resolved.
Yeah, the 100-year war.
And they're passed on to children.
Yeah.
Now a colonialist comes into Africa, and another colonialist comes into Africa, and they bring with them
those wars.
Their same wars. And he is a Congolese who can speak French. He thinks he's better than the Botswana who can speak English. So we also have that issue, and it's embarrassing to even to note that French up to now, it is still milking. Countries are forced in Africa to bank their national budgets.
That's a pact I was talking about.
To bank their budgets in France. And when they take their own money from France,
they charge the interest.
They are charged the interest.
And they can only take up to a certain amount.
That takes the young people to stand up one morning and say, enough. But I like what Kagame did the other day. Just wake up in the morning and say, no more French. We're going British. We're going English. That, to me, I like what Mogobe did. We're taking the lead. and we look for leaders not that are in control, but that are in power also. You use it. I would love Masisi. I would love your president one morning to say, no more diamonds out of Botswana. We dig them here. We process them here. You come and buy them here. Imagine.
And he has the power to do that.
Oh, come on. Why did we put you in power if you are not in control?
He does. Sometimes our leaders don't know their power.
Yeah, they always go around there wiping their hands and etc. Yeah. But we're looking forward to leaders who can have some amount of, like Magufuli. I'm not going to vaccinate my people. No, I don't want. That's it. Not that he was right.
Yeah.
But I'm just looking at when a leader is resolute. And therefore, in conclusion, I can say, I believe in dictatorship. As long as you are dictating the right thing.
So you believe in benevolent dictatorship as opposed to malevolent?
On the contrary, democracy that is negotiated into evil. It's a waste of time and the destruction of human life.
The problem with that dictatorship is that it depends on one person. And if it goes wrong, look what's happening in Russia. If it goes wrong, it goes really berserk.
Yeah, true. But if we put you in power, we are hoping. We've actually made you a dictator. We are hoping that you will, the strength we saw you campaigning and talking, we hope that when you get to office, you carry a little bit of that and make it better for us as people.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true.
So every leader, I mean, when they voted Trump, they didn't know they were voting a dictator. Who complained about it?
Yeah. Your chance now to ask me a question as we conclude. We have one question.
One question to ask you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Where do we go after we die? Where do we go? Where do we come from when we are born? What is time as far as you concerned? Is it linear? Is it cyclical, zodiacal, or time is vertical?
That's 4 questions. The last two are above me. I'm not as philosophical.
You said I must ask you a difficult question.
Yeah. Well, my assistants were saying that. But in short, I believe that there's eternal life, and as a Christian, I take it literally that a time will come when the graves will be open, and that there'll be salvation will be applied. As a believer, that's what I believe. So I believe that death is not the end.
I'll make it difficult for you. If you were colonized by the Chinese, what would you be? If you were colonized by the Muslims, what would you be? What makes you think that you're a Christian? Is it what you decided to be, or is what the colonial system has made you to be?
I won't answer that one, except to say I hear your point. I hear your point, and I get your point. Now, look at that camera there as we conclude. The viewer there, you want to leave them with something motivational, something uplifting, something encouraging as we part.
Before the end of this year, I want to challenge all of you out there, please plant a tree. And as you plant a tree, you will learn when to plant a tree, how to water a tree. And we only are sure of the future when one generation plants trees that they're not going to be eating from, but that their children are going to be eating from. Then we know the future is secure when one generation invests into the next generation. But above everything else, plant a tree. Plant a tree.
Do you mean literally or metaphorically?
Plant a tree physically on your grandfather's grave. Plant an avocado tree. Plant a tree. And when we can plant more trees, we're securing the ground, creating fruits, shade for those that are all around us. Take that as a philosophy, as a principle from farmers of thought. Don't burn in the sun. Plant a tree. And remember, when you plant a tree, you're not only planting it for yourself. The birds of the air, the animals of the field, the fruits and etc. You benefit the community when you're of use to it. And in conclusion, remember, as you plant a tree, you are the tree.
Wow. Now, how do people engage with the organization? Do you want to give them your contacts, social media, and elsewhere?
Farmers of Thought, Maponga J on Facebook, on Twitter, Maponga J Vudzijena on Instagram, Maponga J on TikTok, Maponga J email, mapongaj@gmail.com. But yes, the institute is Farmers of Thought, and I think we are moving towards the last part of Farmers of Thought to formalize and standardize some of our materials, and so that we can take some of you graduates into a medium interface to after you graduate.
Yes.
Just to make sure that you understand what you have studied and how do you make it relevant. So I want to create that bridge because many of us go to school, but school does not go through us. So I want to create like a space of interface.
Wow.
So that we can plug it back into the community as relevant as possible.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. You've been a wonderful guest. I really appreciate what we shared today.